Yo, welcome back everybody. I hope you guys are doing well as always. So for today's video, we got a super special one here. The team over at Ujam reached out to me and sent over their brand new synthesizer called Webcore. If you guys aren't familiar with Usynth, it's basically a synthesizer VST that you can use various banks inside of. And this new one called Webcore was designed around hyperpop and digicore sound. So it's full of some really nice basses, leads, plucks, synths. It pretty much has everything you need to kind of make that virtual hyperpop sound. And I actually ended up making one of my favorite beats in the past couple months with this plugin. So I'm really excited to share this one with you guys. But without further ado, let's just jump right into the breakdown. All right, so we're over in FL Studio now, and for these types of melodies for like hyperpop related stuff, usually you want the BPM to be pretty crazy fast. So I have it set here at 170. The very first thing I wanted to start with was laying down some kind of bass pattern. So I went into this Usynth plugin, into the Webcore section, and I grabbed this bass called the metallic boss bass. We're working in the scale of F minor, and this is the pattern that I laid down for the bass. So right off the rip, you can hear that hyperpop influence, the plucky bass with that heavy distortion. Another cool thing about Usynth and Webcore is it comes with a bunch of different parameters. So if you wanted to change the distortion levels, you know, how harsh it is, like for this bass, you can change the bit crushing amount, you get the color, which is basically just saturation. You can make it darker, brighter. There's just a whole bunch of like stuff you can change to kind of really craft that sound that you want. All right, so the next thing I did was I just grabbed a random one shot that had a little bit more pluck to it, and I just layered that over the bass pattern, pretty much using the same notes, just cut it up a little bit more. And that just acted as like a really nice kind of high-end accent to that original bass. All right, so then the next thing we added was another Usynth instance. This time I'm using the preset Rolling Euro Anthem from the metallic and synthetic section. Another cool thing about this is you can really customize the preset. So if you picked one of these like stock ones and you really like all the effects that it has on, but you might not necessarily like the sound or it doesn't fit, you can actually just go in here and change to any of the other preset sounds that they have. I did that for a couple of these where I didn't really think that whatever the preset initially had fit well. So I ended up changing just the sound, but since I liked all of these effects, they stayed with it. All right, so back to that other sound. This is the MIDI pattern that we have. So it looks pretty chaotic at first glance, but all that's going on really is we have the bass line, and that's coming straight from that original bass. And then we just have this section right here that repeats over 8 times. And the only thing that ends up changing are these notes here. They get pitched up and they get rearranged a little bit. So over here we have the G sharp, A sharp, and C. And then over in this section we have the G, G sharp, and A sharp. All right, so on that for the effects, I have an EQ that's cutting out a bunch of the lows just because I didn't want it to clash with the bass that I already had. And then we have another EQ that's just kind of taking a little bit off the high end. Now, like I said before, all of these presets are fully customizable. So if you don't like how much distortion is on this preset, you can turn that down with this knob here and then play it and it'll have no distortion. Personally, I kind of liked the distorted aspect to it. I thought it really worked well for the hyperpop sound, so I kept it. So the next thing I added was another plucking pattern. And this one, as you can see, like I talked about before, I used the 80s metal bass like initial preset, but I ended up changing the sound under the synthesizer section because I liked all the effects that were on this one. I just wanted a different sound. So I ended up changing this one to the baby ARP preset. In the ARPs and leads category. And this is the MIDI for that sound, again, following the like descending and ascending pattern. effects on that, again, we just have an EQ that's cutting the lows out, boosting a little bit of those mids. All right, then this next sound is where I kind of built some chords around those bass lines. So really we just made some simple triad chords for all of those bass notes. So the preset I'm using for that is this Warm Violins. It's from the Pads and Textures. So for that sound, it doesn't really sound anything like the MIDI looks because I added a bunch of different effects to it. The first one we have is this auto chroma, and I put this Watching Waterfalls preset on it. Then the next thing I did was I added a tremolator. These are the settings I tweaked a little bit. Then we added a Shaper Box 3 with just this really simple volume cutout at the end, and that's set to half speed. And then we got a EQ that's just cutting out all of the lows, so there's no like muddiness clashing with the bass. So after all that, I rendered everything out just to have it as a clean audio file, and that's what this is sounding like. So yeah, just a really cool kind of rhythmic feel to it. Then the next thing I added was another just kind of plucking kind of melody line. And this is the Cute Bell Motif preset. And it's got the glassy plongs sound. This is the MIDI pattern for it. A lot of these MIDI patterns are similar looking because I used kind of the same like range of notes for all of them. But that range is what kind of gives you that like melodic feel. Now that does sound a little bit different than the actual VST preset because I have the Shaper Box on it. It's basically just adding some like stuttering and some drive automations. Without that Shaper Box though, you pretty much get the same sound, just less kind of harsh. So then the last thing I added MIDI wise was another bass pattern. And this one is just to really emphasize like that kind of hard hitting distorted hyperpop sound. And this preset is the Disto Phase bass from the basses category. And the MIDI only plays the first couple notes of the bass line and then the last one before the 4 bars restarts. So this is all you have for that pattern. So yeah, just kind of like I said, another accent bass. And then the last thing I added was just a vocal sample from Splice. Nothing really crazy about that one. I just added some processing to it, some reverbs and some choruses, and then some EQs. Yeah, just a little nice accent vocal. So yeah, that's it for the whole melody. Here we have the arrangement view, how I arranged everything. I pretty much kept all of the basses playing throughout the whole thing because that acts as like the low end for the beat as well. Since there's no like 808s or anything, I just relied on those basses. So I kept them in the whole time. Other than that, I just usually cut out some sounds here and there. Usually make the intro like a little bit emptier so then all of the sounds can come in and it kind of builds hype. And then usually for like hooks and stuff, I usually leave pretty much all of the sounds in because that should be like the most important part of the song. And then for verses and stuff, I just kind of take out pieces that I think maybe can let the beat breathe a little bit. So yeah, this is what we have for the entire melody. Very, very cool melody. Definitely that sort of hyper pop sound, really virtual, like distorted. But yeah, now we're gonna go over to the drum sounds and I'll show you guys how I made the beat. So really not too many crazy sounds for this beat. There's only 6 different drum samples and then like a little drum loop that just is from Splice that I kind of added as like a little accent thing. So going over these one by one, the first thing we have is the snare, and all of these sounds are from my 2025 stash kit. And this is the river snare. Then next we got this outside kick, and this is just kind of like to accent those basses, like I said, give it that really good punch that a lot of these hyper pop songs have. Then we got this little effect that kind of plays at the beginning of every 8 bars. And then we have the hi-hats, pretty simple pattern, just kind of cuts them out here and there to give it a little bit more bounce. Then we got this little crash that plays at the beginning of the 8 bars, and I just added in these 3 notes here to kind of give it like a little bit of a punchier, kind of like more important feeling that this is the beginning of the 8 bars again. And it also plays along with the kick. And then last thing we got is this little chant that plays on the 5 over here. Only hits 1 time every 8 bars. Just another sort of little accent thing to add like emphasis to a section. Yeah, and then like I said, I just added in this little drum sample here. It's very, very quiet, kind of tucked away in the background, but it just adds a little bit of like groove to the whole drum pattern. So this is everything all together. So yeah, that's it for all the drum sounds. I'm gonna play everything we got together so you guys can hear how it's sounding as a whole. Nice little breakdown here. So yeah, really, really cool beat. You probably heard this little like transition effect. I think I just found this on Splice. Just kind of reversed it and added it as a little transition here. That's about it. Otherwise, the arrangement, I don't really do anything too crazy. Just some cuts here and there to kind of emphasize certain sections. That's pretty much the main theme of like how I arrange all my beats. And yeah, that's gonna do it for this one. Again, huge shout out to Ujam for sending over this plugin. The Webcore bank is crazy. I'm gonna definitely be using it in a lot more virtual stuff. And there's even some presets in there that you can use for like a lot of other production as well. It doesn't have to be just hyperpop, but it's definitely useful for that genre. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me. I hope you guys learned something as always, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.